Hello and welcome to today's sports psychology screencast. This is part 2 in the series of confidence screencasts. So we looked at Veely's model of sports confidence in the previous screencast. Today's focus is going to be on a new theorist, which is Bandura, which we've come across before in sports psychology. And we're looking specifically at something called self-efficacy. Now, self-efficacy is Bandura's terminology for what Veely terms state sports confidence. And basically, if I just put that into perspective for you, self-efficacy refers to the situation-specific form of confidence. And Bandura had a look into how certain sources would influence your situation-specific form of confidence. And the model that you will be given in the exam looks like this, and it will give you the 4 sources and then talk about how it will influence your efficacy expectations and therefore will influence your athletic performance. So the model looks like this. So you have 4 sources, and these 4 sources basically can either have a positive effect or negative effect on your self-efficacy and therefore performance. So these strategies actually are really popular with sports psychologists, because if sports psychologists are working with a sports performer who has a low situation-specific confidence in a particular skill in their sport, they might go to the sports psychologist to try and raise that self-efficacy. And the sports psychologist can use these 4 sources as methods by which they can improve the self-efficacy. Now, as I said before, we're going to have a look in the screencast how these 4 sources can, 1, increase or have a positive effect on self-efficacy, therefore performance, but also we're going to have a look at how these 4 sources can have a negative effect on self-efficacy and therefore performance. So let's start with the positive and have a look at what these 4 sources refer to then. So we'll start off. You will always get the model in the paper, so it's just as a little start point, just a reminder that the definition of self-efficacy is situation-specific form of confidence. Confidence when taking a specific shot in basketball, when taking a penalty in football, confidence when doing a pirouette in dance, a situation-specific form of confidence. So these 4 sources then, let's have a look at the positive application of these. So a performance accomplishment basically refers to the process of reminding a performer of previous success. So performance accomplishments reminding a performer of previous success. So what might this be? If a football player was going through a bad run on penalties, a coach might show a striker a video of previous successful penalties, because it's situation specific, a penalty, but you're reminding them by showing them a video of those previous successful. It doesn't have to be shown them a video, you could just remind them of a time when they did score. Now, another way that this source can have a positive effect on self-efficacy is that if you consider any successful experiences you've had, a way that you can increase your self-efficacy is making sure that when you have had previous success, that success is attributed internally. So all that means is the reason that you give the success is something to do internally with you. For example, ability. So internal attributions for that previous success, e.g. if you want to put here, I scored the penalty because I've got high ability with penalties. I scored the penalty because I work hard at my penalties. Effort and ability are 2 attributions that can be really positive in terms of their impact on self-efficacy and therefore performance. So I've just given you an extra one there. The example is linked to reminding a performer of previous success. So next source of self-efficacy we're going to look at is vicarious experience. Now, vicarious is basically learning from other people. So what we're going to look at here is say that, one way that you can increase your self-efficacy, have a positive effect, is by seeing someone of a similar ability being successful. So that basically means if you have low self-efficacy when taking a penalty in football, if you are in a penalty shootout and you're number 3 and the first 2 people, you've seen your teammates score the penalties, this, according to Bandura's model of self-efficacy, proposes that if you see a teammate score a penalty, this will have a positive effect on your self-efficacy, therefore maybe increasing your performance when taking a penalty. Next one going down then, verbal persuasion. This is pretty self-explanatory. If a coach wants to increase someone's self-efficacy when taking a penalty, they can persuade them verbally that they're good at taking penalties. Now, obviously, we can't use those words, but what we would do is translate that to a positive feedback from a coach, okay? And this is most effective if it comes from a significant other, a role model, someone, the performer on the receiving end of this verbal persuasion, respects. So that is that point. And then from that, if we have a look at that, an example I've just put in here, for example, a coach praising a performer for scoring a penalty in the past, or say that they're good at taking penalties, and that might help their self-efficacy increase, which would increase athletic performance. The final source that can either increase or decrease self-efficacy is emotional arousal. Now, emotional arousal is a really interesting one, and it's to do with the fact how you interpret changing arousal levels. So if we're going to talk about this, what it's doing is making sure that the people who have low self-efficacy in a specific skill have an understanding that arousal levels can change. So the first way you can look at this is that it's important to educate athletes that if you're taking a penalty, your arousal is going to be high. And it's understanding that high arousal can lead to high performance, and often it's going to be there when you're doing these type of skills such as a penalty. So I put into here as an example a player scoring a penalty in a final under high arousal, therefore understanding that actually that high arousal can lead to good performance. But we can flip that over if you want to look at it from a different aspect. If you are someone, for example, who's got a low zone of optimal functioning and you need to have low anxiety and low arousal, it's also a way that if you know that, then it might be that you have an understanding of how to lower your arousal. And this would be things like things like mental rehearsal. It might be positive self-talk as examples of strategies that can lower your cognitive arousal if you're worrying about taking that penalty. So that's having a look at it. There's two ways you can angle that. You can choose which one, maybe make both in your notes. So that is our positive way. So there are 4 sources that influence self-efficacy, and this is the application of those 4 sources or strategies to have a positive effect. But now what we need to have a look at is say, how could these 4 sources lead to a low self-efficacy? So obviously, it would be reversed in terms of the information. So if you have, I'm not put the examples in here, if you want to add them, you're more than welcome to. But if we reverse this, then when thinking about a penalty, when could performance accomplishments lead to a low self-efficacy? Wow, it could if you're in a situation where the performer has not experienced previous success. So that could be that someone's taken their first ever penalty, never scored a penalty before. Therefore, that could lead to a low self-efficacy and therefore performance. So you could just link that. I've left the examples free, so you can put your own in. If you want to use penalties again, you can. Another reason when performance accomplishments could lead to low self-efficacy, if you fail, when you fail in a sport, it could be that you attribute that failure internally. So you miss a penalty in a game, in a big game, and then when you fail, you attribute that to ability or effort, particularly ability such as this. So if attributing failure to internal factors such as ability, I just can't take penalty. If that's how you're attributing your failure, then it's more likely you're going to have low self-efficacy. Next one. Vicarious experience. So when we talked about the positive impact on self-efficacy, we said seeing someone of a similar ability be successful. So that flips over. If we see someone of a similar ability miss a penalty or fail, this could lead to low self-efficacy. But not only that, this can be a little bit more detailed. Sometimes when you are someone who has low self-efficacy, for example, in taking a penalty, and you see people who are way better than you scoring all the time, it can actually make you feel quite low in terms of your own situation-specific confidence, because you think, they're brilliant, it's all right for them, but I can't do that. So another way vicarious experiences, seeing someone else could have a negative effect, is this. If you see someone of a higher ability, older succeed, it can decrease your self-efficacy because you think you can't reach that level. Verbal persuasion then, okay, so one of the reasons why you might have low self-efficacy in penalties is because you haven't received any positive feedback, maybe because you've never performed the skill well. That could be one thing, but also another reason it could lead to low self-efficacy is if a coach has overused negative feedback with you and therefore you feel like you can never achieve it. Final thing then is to say, how can our emotional arousal lead to low self-efficacy? Well, we talked about before saying that we had to understand that high arousal could actually lead to high performance, but if you're somebody who associates high arousal or perceives high arousal to always lead to low performance, that can lead to low self-efficacy. So if you associate high arousal with failure, then this could lead to low self-efficacy. Also, it could be the fact that if you're someone with a low zone of optimal functioning, e.g. you need low anxiety or arousal to perform optimally, it might be that you do not understand how to lower your arousal and you don't have those strategies. So you might not have stress management strategies to lower your arousal if you're someone in the low zone of optimal functioning. So don't know mental rehearsal, don't know positive self-talk. So hopefully you can see how they've reversed. Please make sure you make good notes on these. 1, how these sources have a positive effect on self-efficacy. 2, how these sources have a negative effect on self-efficacy. Thank you very much.